Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
How are you?
Good, good. How's everybody else?
Good. Good evening, everyone.
Oh, ma'am.
Hi. How's everybody?
Hey, doing well. Doing well.
Doing real good. Hi, Izzy.
Hey, Pete, how you doing? Good, good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm 6. Councilor Diaz may be reveling in her victory.
Sorry, say that again?
Councilor Diaz may be reveling in her victory. As enough. Yes, yeah. Hello, Councilor Craig.
Hello, how is everyone?
Good. How you doing?
Ms. Craig, how are you? Good, very good.
Good, good. I am gonna, I have 7:31. What time does everybody else have?
7:31.
Tim.
I am going to give it another minute, then I'm gonna go ahead and start the meeting. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the June 9th, 2020 meeting of the Council of the City of Lancaster. I hereby call this meeting to order. Again, no American flag behind me, so please forgive me for dispensing with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Harris, would you call the roll of members?
Mr. President. Mr. Arroyo.
Here.
Ms. Baker.
Here.
Ms. Craig. Ms. Craig, you're muted.
I'm here. Sorry.
All right. Ms. Diaz. Mr. Garcia Molina.
Here.
Mr. Soto.
Here.
And President Smith Waddell.
Here, Mr. Harris, please record Councilor Diaz as excused. We move then to the approval of the minutes for May 26th, 2020, and June 1st and June 5th, 2020, which, if I'm recalling correctly, were the two special meetings last week. In addition to, I believe, a committee meeting. So are we actually approving 4 sets of minutes, Mr. Harris?
No, we approved the committee meeting minutes at the next committee meeting. So
That's right. That's right. All right. Assuming that it's fine to take these as a whole, I will accept a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Seconded.
Great. Are there any council comments? All right. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Baker.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Garcia Molina.
Here. Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
And President Smith Waddell.
Aye. All right. Proclamations, honors, awards, and resolutions of recognition, Mr. Harris.
We have none tonight, Mr. President.
All right. that moves us to the public comment period. This is reserved for those persons who have contacted the city clerk prior to the meeting. Mr. Harris, do we have any reservees for public comment?
We do not, Mr. President. We had one, but he was unable to attend.
All right. Great. We then move into reports requested by council, and I have here that we are amending previous CDBG and ESG action plans. Is that correct?
It is, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. In that case, I hereby call to order the public hearing for the amendment of the city's 2019 Community Development Block Grant and Emergency Solutions Grant Action Plan. I assume that's you, Mrs. Thorson?
Me and Director Dulles.
Oh, I didn't see you there, Chris. My apologies.
No problem at all. I think that I will kick it off tonight, but
Hey,
then I will
Chris,
turn it.
I'm sorry. I just want to jump in and ask that everybody speak up to a tone that might feel uncomfortable to you at home, but will be much better for everybody who is listening in on this. Thank you.
Okay. I was saying I think I will kick things off tonight, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Thorson in short order. Thank you, President Smith-Waddell. Good evening, councilors. Nice to see you all again. I know that we covered this topic last week at the committee meeting. Just wanted to restate for the record that this is the official public meeting for the CDBG and ESG CARES Act plan. Just wanted to make a quick administrative note that I believe when you just read the information about the amendment to the plan, the administrative action that is necessary to disperse the CARES funding is technically a substantial amendment to the 2019 action plan. So I just wanted you to recognize that that is one and the same. So we'll be talking about the CARES Act stimulus funding tonight, but that is one and the same as the substantial amendment. Very good. So moving on, we're going to change up the order a little bit tonight. I'm going to do the first few slides, and then, as I mentioned, I'll turn it over to Ms. Thorson. Hopefully the change in order will spice things up a little bit. I know this is the second time through for most of the council members, so thank you for your patience. This first slide outlines the amount of money that has been allocated to the City of Lancaster through the CARES Act stimulus funding bill. As you can see here, we're getting an additional approximately $1 million in community development block grant funding. We're also getting an additional $500,000 in emergency solutions grant funding. This is on top of our 2020 formula allocation that we talked about a couple weeks ago. So in a perfect world, the 2020 action plan and these CARES Act, while different, should be working together towards similar community development goals. As you can see here in the image for the CDBG, the real intention of this program at its core is to distribute funding and resources to low and moderate income community members, programs that serve low to moderate income community members. And as you can see, surrounding that orbit there, that gives you a sense of the main activities that are eligible for CDBG dollars. That is programs that would support quality affordable housing, improvements to property condition, specifically diminishing blight and vacancy issues within the city, economic development purposes, public services, and ultimately planning and administration of the program itself. And then if you look to the right of the screen, that's focused on the Emergency Solutions Grant program, and at its core, the purpose of that program is to provide support financial support and programming for community members who are experiencing homelessness. The main activities that are eligible in that particular program for ESG is homeless outreach, also emergency shelters, rapid rehousing, which refers to a situation when a person is experiencing homelessness, trying to move that person from a shelter to temporary housing as soon as possible. Then there's permanent supportive housing, and ultimately homelessness prevention, which really focuses on those individuals who are on the verge of eviction, the verge of becoming homeless. The last thing I wanted to note on this slide here is that all of these program activities are really focused on two main overarching aims from HUD. And the first is to, let's make sure we get the language right, this is to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus, to COVID-19. These are really intended to be emergency funds dealing with the pandemic. And then also, as we've talked about in the past, all of these program activities have to fall within the main goals of the city's 5-year consolidated plan that we submit to HUD. Moving along, next please. Okay, bear with me for a moment, thank you. The timeline here is intended to give counselors a sense of the work that's been done over the last couple of months. We've really done, I believe, a robust amount of work to get us to a place so we really understand the needs in the community and where is the best place to divvy up this CARES Act funding. Starting a couple months ago in April 2020, we received notice of award from HUD on April 7th, 2020. That's when we learned that we were getting an additional $1 million in CDBG funds and additional $500,000 in ESG dollars. After that time, on April 7th, our department decided to conduct an online survey of our landlords and property owners within the city to get a sense of how they were being affected by the pandemic. We also in April started what we called partner consultations. That really was an interview process with our community, with community organizations, nonprofit organizations that work specifically on community development. That moved us into May 2020, and we really expanded and ramped up our partner consultations at that time. We ended up doing over 30 partner consultations with organizations throughout the city. We also worked very closely with the county to create and release a joint RFP to community organizations to solicit applications for that community development funding, both CDBG and ESG. And then ultimately, we did develop a first draft of what that financial plan would look like. In other words, what were the program categories that we thought we most needed to fund. That brought us to June 1st, which was the committee meeting that we had a week ago, and our official public comment period for the CARES Act funding was from June 1st to June 5th, which we posted that, made it available for public citizens to provide comments. And ultimately, at the end of that process, our next step is to present to the council tonight, see if there are any additional public comments that we would roll into the process. Our next step is seeking a resolution of support from council tonight, which is jointly part of this meeting, the public meeting tonight. And then assuming that we are able to earn a resolution of support for this, we would move to submitting the plan and what we've been calling this substantial amendment, substantial amendment to HUD as soon as is practical. The last stage that I wanted to mention here is that we're in the process right now of reviewing community applications that we received during the RFP period. I want to take a moment and thank Councilmember Arroyo for serving on the review committee. It's been great to have him as part of that process so far. We've got a couple more stages before we make final decisions. And once we make decisions, once the review committee makes decisions about the community organizations to receive funding, that recommendation would come to the department, and the department would then finalize those contracts. So I know that that is a lot, but we wanted to present the whole arc of the process to the council and to the public. And I think with that, that provides a good stage for the program as a whole. And I'm going to turn it over to Susanna so that she can talk in a little more detail about where we want to put the money.
Thank you. So yeah, as we discussed last Monday, where we landed with our CDBG dollars is what you're looking at here. Is our first draft plan for how we want to, in big buckets, place our CDBG dollars and our strategy for really attacking COVID. So the first bucket you see is for $154,000 approximately. It's for public health services. It would go towards salaries of health officers who will be housed in City Hall and help with our contact tracing effort, but also help with several other programs that have to do with our health officers around cleanliness in the community and responding to the community's needs. We also have a large bucket, our largest bucket, $450,000 for emergency rental assistance. This is short-term grants to renters, no more than 3 months, to prevent them from being displaced. The third bucket, $150,000, is for home rehab and critical repair for owner-occupied properties. We feel like due to COVID and due to decreasing salaries and decreasing economic health, people will still need to upkeep their home but have less funding to do that. So if we can help them provide a little extra dollars for that, that's where our thought was that with that. And then the final, economic recovery and development, we're still sort of honing strategy specifically about what we want to do with this particular bucket, but we are exploring grants, loans, capital improvements to establish, stabilize, and expand micro enterprises in the city, and also exploring payments and salaries to city employees to help push the permit process along so that owners or business owners looking to open a business or to build can move that process along quickly and efficiently. I want to give a little bit of background about how we got to these buckets. You can see here a little bit of data. So for the first left-hand corner of the screen, you look at and you see public health services. Just to go over this rather quickly, we saw 3 indications of a need to fund public health services. We saw, of course, slowing social distancing efforts that weren't really meeting or matching the rest of the state, continued COVID cases, and also an increased call for city health-related issues, such as increased calls for rats and trash and debris. On the right-hand side, we see some data that indicates a need for emergency rental assistance, along with data from our landlord survey that indicated a lot of landlords struggling to get payments from their respective tenants. We also got a large cry from our service organizations saying that this is going to be a need based on their understanding of the community, and so that's, I think, the 2 major reasons why we decided to put a large amount in that bucket. Moving along, we also looked at several things for home rehab and critical repair. Of course, a predicted rise in unemployment rate that we're already seeing, but also sustaining issues in this community. So we have old housing stock, so we have a presence of lead in a lot of our housing. We also have a presence of long-term problems that can add up for homeowners over time. So really, although we are responding to unemployment rate and increasing that program, we're also responding to a continued presence and need for this program. On the right-hand side, we took a lot of the information around economic recovery and development from the Lancaster County Recovery Plan that was produced by Lancaster County EDC and Lancaster Chamber. In that plan, they described that or businesses at the greatest risk of closure are our smaller businesses from 1 to 19 employees. They also described the first two pieces of their strategy as getting financial aid out the door to businesses as efficiently and quickly as possible, and also developing a plan to get businesses to a new normal safely and efficiently. And so we think that the two areas of explorations, whether it's grants or loans, technical assistance, or on the other side of that, permitting and making sure that process is as honed and as simple for the business owner as possible, really helps us get to a good place with those first two goals. Going down the list here for Emergency Solutions Grant, these are the three main buckets that we set aside for our $500,000 in ESG. Rapid rehousing works similar to emergency rental assistance, with the exception that it's designed for homeless, people who are actually experiencing homeless, whether they are living in a place not fit for habitation or in an emergency shelter. And this is designed to help pay for their rental, for their rent for the short and medium term, but also help with other wraparound services and making sure that those individuals are set up for success. Outreach, we have $100,000 set aside for that. This is really to help go out into the community. Outreach workers are designed to go out into the community and meet with and develop relationships of trust with people who are currently experiencing homelessness and are not currently sheltered in an emergency shelter or any other program. So developing those relationships of trust and trying to connect those people to shelter in an efficient way. And then finally, the largest bucket that we have for ESG is our emergency shelter support. So this really, as I'll describe in the next slide, this really came from the community as well. Our service providers really described an increasing need for shelter support. And so this would really just help our emergency shelters with renovation costs, essential services, operation costs, and if need be, hotel and motel vouchers. So this is the information we really gathered to try and help us make the decisions about those big buckets. For homeless outreach, we understand that there's around approximately 60 people currently living in parks in Lancaster City and also much more countywide. And that is an increase due to COVID, and I think there is also additional complications around COVID. People living outside, there's often more challenges around cleanliness and making sure that you feel safe. Additionally, for emergency shelter, we've got a lot of indications through the RFP process and through conversations with community partners that this was an increasing need. Not only because, again, there's an increase in cost for supplies to make sure that the shelters are clean and safe for their residents, but also some of our partners have described an increase in domestic violence needs, and so some of our domestic violence victims are increasing and are in need of additional shelter support. And with that, I kind of turn it over to you guys if you want me to go back over something or if you have any questions.
I have a question. How long would the rent be paid for with the rapid rehousing from the ESG grant?
I believe it's up to 6 months.
And then expansion along with being supported?
Is there a need for shelter expansion as well as support? Is that your question?
Yes, for the shelters that already are in existence.
And we'll say that our RFPs do include requests for an increase in development of new shelter space. I think there is at this time an increased need for shelter, but you can do that in different ways, whether it's building more beds in an existing shelter, whether it's just making sure that shelter has what it needs to make all of its beds available, or if it's building a new shelter.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Any other council questions? Okay, ostensibly this being a public hearing, I'll take a moment to see if anybody wants to call into the phone lines. But I will at this moment ask if there are any other council questions or comments. And of course, thank Mr. Delft and Mrs. Thorson for their diligence around the CARES Act, CDBG, and ESG funding, and making sure these things are moving in a timely manner because our communities are indeed in need of this funding. You got anything there, Patrick?
No?
All right. Director Delft, Mrs. Thorson, do you have anything else before I close this public hearing?
I don't think so. Susanna?
No, just thank you, and a special thank you to Councilor Arroyo. Thank you so much for sitting in on all those crazy meetings.
Agreed.
Thank you for dealing with all my questions and appreciate your diligence. So thank you both.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Councilor Arroyo, just because and to minimize discussion when we get to the actual agenda item, how are you feeling about things as they progressed? I see you there, Mr. Hopkins.
Yeah, I feel really good about the applications. Having the opportunity to
Hello, this is the city council meeting.
it's that we're looking at.
Hi, I was wondering if I could ask a question about the recent protests that have been going on and what the city council is planning to do regarding the police department and what the protesters are demanding.
Hold on, Councilor Arroyo. Hello, good evening, ma'am. This is Council President Ismail Smith-Waddell. If I heard your question correctly, it was in regards to the protests that are going on and what we're going to do on the subject of policing in Lancaster City?
Yes.
That is an excellent question, and I would love to engage you in further conversation about that. Unfortunately, right here, unless your question is related to the HUD action plan, I'm going to have to ask you to wait. There is, however, at the end of the meeting, an open public comment period where I would be happy to give you 3 minutes to speak, as is typical, and engage with your question and let the rest of council engage with your question if they would like to as well. Would you mind calling back then?
Yes, I'll call back then.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. I'm sorry, Councilor Royal, please continue.
Oh, no worries. I'll wrap up my comments. It was just with the applications coming through, I'm feeling very confident with the action plan that's put together and with the applications coming through that these dollars are going to go a long way in our community. So I'm very excited about that.
Excellent. All right. I hereby close the public hearing regarding the amendment of the 2019 action plan, which then moves us to reports of council committee meetings held on June 1st, 2020. Public Safety, Councilor Garcia Molina.
Thank you, Mr. President. We actually didn't meet.
All right. Thank you. Public Works, Councilor Soto.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President. Public Works Committee did meet on, June first. There was one item on the agenda, Administration Resolution number 28, 2020, which is authorizing a grant application for the Northeast Trail Extension Project. Yes, the grant will be for $1.3 million to PennDOT for construction and pedestrian bridge over the Conestoga River to connect the Conestoga Pines Park. The total cost for the project will be $1.8 million. Of that, $500,000 will be coming from the city capital bond fund. And that's all I have on that, Council President.
Thank you, Councilor Soto. Economic Development, Councilor Arroyo.
Mr. President, we did not meet, so thank you.
Thank you. Finance, Councilor Baker.
Thank you very much, Council President. The Finance Committee met on June 1st. There was one item on our agenda, which we'll discuss later on during this meeting. It's a bill for the first reading, bill number 5 of 2020, regarding transferring bicycles to the School District of Lancaster in this meeting. Also, Mr. President, as you are aware, the city is self-insured for workers' compensation costs. Every year, funds to pay workers' compensation claims are included in individual department budgets, but those claims are paid out of the administrative service budget. So each quarter, we shift money from those departments where injured workers have made claims to the administrative services budget to cover those costs. For the first quarter of the year, workers' comp claims were made by police officers, firefighters, and public works staff. A total of $67,045.20 is being moved from those department budgets to administrative services. Because this money is being moved between departments, it does require an action from the City Council. So I therefore make a motion to approve the first quarter workers' compensation transfers totaling $67,045.20 as proposed.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Council comments.
Nothing beyond my paragraph there, Mr. President.
If anybody's confused, it is just as Councilor Baquet said. These are items that are budgeted to the individual departments, but paid out of the administrative services portion of, if you will imagine, the great big Lancaster City bank account. And so just to keep the books balanced, we're moving what's allotted in those departments for workers' comp into the administrative services portion of the bank account so they can be paid. I'll take a few seconds here for callers to come comment on items germane to this specifically. All right, hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Baker.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
And President Smith Waddell.
Aye. Thank you,
Thank
Councilor
you.
Baker.
That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Community Planning, Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. I can't find my notes, but at the committee meeting, we met about a dedication of a right-of-way on Grofftown Road. And there were a couple of stipulations that the city required, which I believe were met. So that was that for bill number 2. I make a motion to approve that.
Second.
All in favor?
Hold on just a second. Mr. Harris, there's a look of confusion on your face, which I'd like to address.
I'm sorry. the approval for bill number 2.
That was it.
Well, we'll get to that in the legislative agenda. This is, of course, just committee reports at this point.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Craig. Whenever Mr. Harris has that look on his face, I always stop and pay attention to it because it's usually important.
I didn't see his face, so we'll pay attention to his face. The other thing we had on the agenda was the Community Development Block Grant and Emergency Solution Program. And we'll get into that more as we go on.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Craig. The last committee from the June 1st, 2020 committee meeting is the Personnel Committee. I'll give the report for Councilor Diaz. There was one item, which was the appointment of Julie Hughes to the Historical Architecture Review Board for a 3-year term. This was unanimously approved by the Personnel Committee for consideration at this meeting and at this time. As an ad hoc member of the Personnel Committee, I hereby move that the Council of the City of Lancaster appoint Julie Hughes to the Historical Architecture Review Board for a 3-year term beginning retroactively January 1st, 2020, extending to December 31st, 2022.
Second.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Council comments from the public. Take a few seconds here. Sorry about that. Where did I lose the meeting?
We were waiting for public response to the motion to approve Julie Hughes to the HARB board, and there was no calls.
Great. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Roya.
Aye.
Ms. Baker.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz. I'm sorry. Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
And President Smith Waydell.
Aye. All right. That's all that the Personnel Committee had, and I believe that is our last committee for reports. So we will move then into our legislative agenda, beginning with ordinances for first reading. Administration Bill number 5, 2020. Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. President. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, approving, authorizing, and ratifying the execution of an agreement of sale by and between the City of Lancaster and the School District of Lancaster, pursuant to which the city will sell bicycles previously used by the Police Bureau to the School District of Lancaster in order for the school district to provide them to a community organization that will train school district students in basic job skills and bicycle repair, setting forth the terms of the agreement, providing that no financing or organizational structure is necessary to implement or finance the agreement, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance shall take effect as provided by Pennsylvania law.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. I'll hear a motion.
Motion to approve?
First read, Mr.
Oh, of course. Great. Cool. We don't need a motion. Thank you, Councilor Soto. That's my fault. Is this you, Councilor Bakay? Is this finance, technically?
It is technically finance. So the title pretty much, it says what it does on the box on this one. The city has possession of bicycles from various sources. And this is a way for us to give them, without exchanging any money for them, to the school district of Lancaster so that they can have further benefit through a nonprofit, in this case, the Common Wheel, to rehab those bicycles. It's just a way for us to do that through this ordinance. Is there anything that I'm missing there, Mr. Hopkins?
No, the only other thing I'd add is just, I had some email back and forth with Matt Przoara at the School District of Lancaster today about this and about what their schedule is. If the ordinance is approved at second reading on June 23rd by City Council, we'll then send the finalized ordinance, signed ordinance, to the school district, and they have a meeting now scheduled for July 14th, at which they can approve. They only have one reading for approval of their part of this whole process. So normally they don't have a July meeting, but they scheduled one for some other items, and we'll have this on the agenda also.
Thank you.
Mr. Hopkins, has that timing matter been communicated to the Commonweal, which is the community benefit organization mentioned in the title of the ordinance?
It has not, because that happened sometime mid-afternoon today, and a few other things were going on.
A couple other things, yeah. All right, good to know. Are there any other council comments on this matter? All right, so then I will take a few moments sorry, there's a fly here. Take a few moments for the public to comment if they so choose. All right, hearing none, I will move us along. Next, we move to resolutions, beginning with Administration Resolution Number 27, 2020. Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. President. The resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster authorizing the mayor to submit a substantial amendment to the 2019 Annual Action Plan, Year 4 of the city's 5-year consolidated plan, to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The submission includes the projected use of funds for the Community Development Block Grant and Emergency Solution Grant programs.
All right, I'll hear a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Great, we have a motion and a second. It's entirely possible that we beat this particular matter to death, but I will hear council comments on it. Okay, I'll turn it over for a few seconds for public comment, again, specifically on the matter of the action plan.
Also, just in case everybody is not aware, Councilor Diaz joined the meeting just a few minutes ago.
Nice. Technical issues with the tablet.
That's just fine. Welcome, Councilor Diaz. I'll take this moment while we're waiting to let you know that council did approve Julie Hughes' appointment to the HARB out of your community.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing none on this matter, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Royal.
Aye.
Ms. Baker.
Aye.
Ms. Gregg.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
And President Smith Waito.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Moving on, resolution number 28, 2020. Mr. Harris?
The resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, authorizing the city to enter into a reimbursement agreement with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation Multimodal Transportation Funds for the Northeast Trail Extension Project.
think I heard a motion from Councilor Soto. I'll hear a second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Council comments on this matter. All right, comments from the public. We'll take about 30 seconds. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Baker.
Aye.
Ms. Gregg.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
And President Smith Whitehouse.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Harris. That moves us into our second public comment period, reserved for items not on the agenda. I would like to give specific attention to the person who called previously that I asked to wait for this period in the meeting. If you would like to call, I'd like to address your comment first, but we're just waiting for general public comment. Thank you. Going once. Going twice.
Call coming in.
Here we go.
Hello, this is the city council meeting.
Hi, I'm the one who called earlier.
Hi, how are you? Could you
I'm good.
provide your name and the street that you live on, please, ma'am?
Yes, my name is Sylvia Rosa, and I live on Rank Mill Road.
Thank you. Go ahead with your comment, ma'am.
Oh, so my comment was that our city and our residents have been protesting for the last 12 days, and I wanted to know the city's commitments to creating change for those protesters and those concerned citizens.
If the rest of council does not mind, I will go ahead and take that question. Ma'am, I'm sorry, I did not catch your full name, but I'm going to go ahead and answer. I'll start by saying that several members of City Council on this call right now were out over the past 12 days and able to develop one-on-one relationships with a number of the protesters and organizers and hear their demands and concerns, not just on pieces of paper or in emails, but directly from their mouths. And we learned a lot from that. So I feel safe speaking for the rest of council when I say we are in fact committed to positive change, progressive change on the matter of policing and public safety, and acknowledging that it's not just a concern, but a tragedy, in fact, when our communities do not feel safe with the people that the city has employed to police them. And we're going to do everything in our power to right that particular tragedy. And you'll hear more from that, more on that from us moving forward. We're still in conversations not just with protest organizers, but also with the administration and leaders at the state level. For some reference to things that have already happened, I would direct you to the city's statement and the press conference on Friday for some immediate short-term commitments, as well as some things that the city has already done. And the reason I'm reluctant, ma'am, frankly, to hand you the whole store metaphorically, as I would like to here, is because I don't want, and I don't think any other member of this council wants to be in the business of hollow promises. So we're reviewing our policies. We're meeting with the police chief, the mayor, state officials. We're reviewing the budget to make sure that what we do offer the residents of the city of Lancaster is a genuine commitment, and not just words to make you feel good for the minute and 45 seconds that you're on this phone call. If you'd be willing to follow up with the city clerk, Mr. Harris, that's B. Harris, Harris, at City of Lancaster, PA. I'd be happy to exchange emails with you going forward. You should also be known to Councilor Xavier Garcia Molina, who is the chair of the Public Safety Committee and will be heading up efforts for accountability in this area going forward. And as one of the chief people representing council who was down at the protests, who has both positively and negatively interacted with the challenges that this moment presents, and frankly, as somebody who has a long history in trauma-informed work, I can think of no better person on council to lead that charge. I apologize for the long answer, ma'am.
I have a follow-up question, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
I know that the city spends $27 million on the Bureau of Police, and I know that the Minneapolis City Council has effectively elected to disband their police and redistribute those funds. Is there anything in the works like that, and is there a transparency plan to let the residents know what exactly you are doing for that? Because I know that the police bureau currently employs 195 people, and that's 195 salaries that are not going into public works or the economic development that could solve the housing issues and the homelessness that were talked about earlier in this meeting.
Yeah, thank you. Those are excellent questions and excellent points to which I am personally sympathetic, though I will not deign to speak for the rest of council. So I'll answer that backwards. So first, yes, there is an ongoing transparency plan, and Councilor Garcia Molina, in fact, has put forward an idea for a committee under his purview to do just that and evaluate not just policing, but all city departments and their budgets for fulfillment of their commitment to equity and other justice issues. So yes, on that front. On the first front, I want to thank you for raising a challenging idea, but one that I think is necessary for us to wrestle with, and that is, frankly, are we putting dollars related to public safety where they are most effective? I can't make you any promises in this meeting, and in fact, it's actually illegal for me to collaborate with enough council members to pass a vote without discussing it publicly. But that's something that has been raised both in public and in private. And we're watching Minneapolis and other cities looking for best practices and best approaches on public safety. We want Lancaster to be a model city, and I will say I want us to be investing as much as possible in housing, homelessness, public works, and other areas. But again, that's not my decision alone, and I'll allow other council members to respond if they like. And then I think I'm going to let this question go. Any other comments from council?
I can add a little bit to that, Mr. President, if I may.
Please.
So yes, I think your question about the budget, especially in relation to public safety within the police department, is really important. The $27 million that you're speaking to, I was just checking the numbers today. So it's $26,846,397 that was proposed in 2020, which was a 4.16% increase in comparison to 2019. So every year when we are coming up to look at the budget, we are determining where budget needs to be cut, where budget needs to be increased. And I agree with you, Mr. President, that we shouldn't be really making promises that we can't analyze at this moment. So I am meeting with multiple individuals, including the chief and Patrick Hopkins, in the upcoming days to be able to really understand the budget, where it stands, where we want it to go. One of the commitments that we have made, which is going to require budget review and further budget kind of analysis on my end with the support of the community, as well as my colleagues, is the promise that we are adding an additional social worker to further support our community and our police officers. So that is one item that will be included in the budget for the next year, which will also require us to look at if we added that salary for that individual, what will the impact be to the rest? So I can't promise necessarily that we'll be cutting the budget for 2021 in ways that the community might be asking for at this moment, just because it is millions and millions of dollars, which most is tied to salaries, which is tied to the union. So before I make any promises related to finances, I do want the opportunity to sit down with individuals that have more expertise, who are able to kind of assist me in assisting them with the planning of the budget that's to come. But the whole time I will be very transparent with the community about those meetings and where we stand in the planning process.
And if I could just add, I think that one of the things that I don't want to lose sight of is that the request to add a police social worker to the Lancaster City Police Department came from the police department. And there is an awareness by our law enforcement that they cannot be all things to all people, and have requested assistance through the hiring of a police social worker, and that we are in the process of evaluating the efficacy of the police social worker 9 months into her role, while also looking ahead at hiring an additional police officer. And I would also caution us that as we're having conversations about the future of our police department, that we also recognize that not every situation is going to be able to be addressed through alternative means. Our police do an incredible amount of investigative work around a number of crimes. And I want to make sure that we are balancing this conversation appropriately while we are addressing racial justice and equity. And I believe it is very important for our city council to make sure that we are affirming for public who need investigations in a number of areas, a number of crimes, sexual assault, rape, burglary, robbery, etc., as well as homicide, that these are men and women who are going into houses that, we're not walking into. And so I just want to make sure that we are continuing to balance this while also underscoring that there are reforms and changes that need to be made. Thank you.
Ma'am, please do follow up with Mr. Harris. I'm going to go ahead and politely request, just because we've been on this matter for about 10 minutes, that we open the space up for additional public comments. But do know that emails, sent to council members do become a part of a public record. So please don't think that by being directed to email that your comment is being shunted away. This is a matter that we very much want to engage with, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Great. Well, we can, just take some more time hitting it now.
Hello, this is the City Council meeting.
Hi, I was just listening in, and I was wondering, I'm sorry, my name is Helena Schiava. I live on North Lime Street. I was wondering if the council could go into a little more detail about the transparency during this process and this time, and how they're continuing efforts to reconcile both protesters and the police department will be communicated to the public.
Councilor Garcia Molina, would you like to?
Sure. So if I heard correctly, to be honest, I couldn't hear most of the question, but the piece that I really got out was the accountability and transparency piece. A lot of what's going to be happening in the upcoming meetings is reports coming to council, which become part of public record, which opens the opportunity for the public to also be a part of the conversation. One of the things that I found from being on the ground with all the protesters for the past 12 days is that there is a need for education, particularly around the role of city council and what spaces people are allowed to express themselves, but also be a part of the conversation and the decision making. I think that city council is that opportunity. We'd also like to, well, at least personally, I would like to continue this conversation with those protesters that are continuing. The protesters are actually forming their own group and attempting now to form an organization to continue their efforts to hold us accountable. So I'm sure that they will be joining regularly at city council meetings to check up on us. But really, my intention is to allow for city council to be that public space for transparency and accountability. With 3 meetings a month, I think we'd be able to provide community regular updates while allowing them to be a part of the conversation and helping to guide us in the next couple months as decisions are being made.
Councilor Garcia Molina, would you also talk a little bit about your proposed ad hoc committee?
Of course. So one of the things that also became apparent to me is that in addition to education, what was needed for the community is the ability to say that 6 months from now we've changed in these very tangible ways. The only problem that I've found, or I guess the opportunity with that, is that the baseline or the data which we would need to compare that future kind of results to isn't currently there. We do track a lot of the data that is being requested by the protesters, but not holistically. So one of the things that we are working on is to create an ad hoc committee on Black and Brown affairs, which really is equity. While it is Black and Brown oriented, I think that in our ability to promote these issues, we're bringing and uplifting everyone. So it is an equity, and it's not solely with public safety, but this ad hoc committee would be assisting council, particularly within the realm of public safety, to determine what those measurable goals are going to be, and also assisting council in taking their experiences to analyze these results. Because one of the things that I found too in my short term is that each of our perspectives and experiences really impact the questions that we have to the city administration, as well as anyone who stands before council. And so I believe that the more voices and experiences that we have, particularly with Black and Brown individuals, the more we'll be able to establish a fair and equitable comparison of now to the future when we come back to revisit that accountability piece. So really the ad hoc committee is to establish a baseline and to provide council on what reports need to look like, the frequency, what data is going to be measured, and doing their own analysis of the data to add an extra lens that we as council might not have been able to interpret beforehand, to continue to promote transparency and accountability between council and the city administration.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Hopkins, did we have another call? I thought I heard.
No, she was just thanking you all for the comments that you made in response to her question.
Oh no, I thought I heard another in the background, but that is all right. I'm going to give it 15 more seconds for comments to come in before moving on.
Hello, this is the city council meeting.
Hi, yes, my name is Nikera Reed. I live on Fremont, and I was just wondering if there's been any more development about what's going to happen with the hospital that closed down and what the plans were.
Yeah, I'll step in and take that.
Can you please restate the question and the name? I'm having a really hard time hearing. I'm sorry to interrupt, President.
Yep.
Ma'am, can you restate your name, please?
Nikera Reed.
Tara?
Nikera Reed?
Nikera Reed, sorry.
Yes.
Reed. And I believe the question was, and ma'am, please correct me if I don't appropriately communicate your question, but I believe that your question was, what is the status of the hospital that closed down, namely the Lancaster Regional Medical Center, most recently purchased by UPMC, formerly and affectionately known as St. Joseph's, and what the plans for that are. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when the COVID-19 pandemic began, we had an approval with certain stipulations and recommendations from the City Planning Commission to move forward on the rezoning. It was clear to me personally, and I think clear, though unspoken for much of the administration and the rest of council, that was not something we could in good conscience act on, especially while we were in sort of a red phase lockdown. I am aware that UPMC continues to wish to move forward, but as of yet, no final plan has come before council for the rezoning application for the site at 250 College Avenue, and so council will take no action until that plan is in our hands in either direction. So what's the status of it? Still closed down, and I will note here that the Army Corps of Engineers and the Pennsylvania Department of Health did not deem it an appropriate or necessary first site to open in the event of COVID-19 overflow. So as of now, it is closed and has all the same internal issues that it previously did at the time of its closure, and the UPMC is working on a plan to present to council, but council will take no action at all until we have a plan. Again, like with the previous commenter, I'm reluctant to make any promises until we have all of the information, which I think is the best possible thing for our community. If UPMC genuinely believes that they and their buyer have a plan that is in the best interest of the Lancaster community, then they are welcome to present it to council, and council and the public will review it accordingly. I hope that answers your question, ma'am.
Yes, it did, and I also had a second question.
Please go ahead.
It was just based on what the last caller had said, and I just wanted to make sure I heard it right. So the only way that a police investigation becomes public knowledge if it's presented to city council?
I am not clear that is the only way that a police investigation becomes public knowledge, but that is one way in which it could. But a number of police investigations, as it has been legal to share that information, have also become public knowledge through the work of Lancaster newspapers. I'm suspecting now, as I'm answering your question, that you might mean something more specific than the entire broad category of police investigations. And so, ma'am, if you'd like to clarify or drill down, I want to make sure that I'm answering the question you're actually asking.
for transparency purposes, just anything the police are doing, what are the ways that it becomes public knowledge?
Right. So again, there is to council, yes, and there is through our media outlets. I believe that part of Councilor Garcia Molina's initiative for an ad hoc committee, which I support, does specifically involve more frequent and more detailed reports from the police department to City Council, especially around our regular updates and uses of force. Is that correct, Councilor Garcia Molina?
That is correct. One of the other things that the city has agreed to is that there will be reports to City Council of all disciplinary actions among police, including suspensions and terminations.
And that report was provided to City Council for the year of 2019, which Mr. Harris can push back out to City Council members.
Okay, thank you. That was all of my questions.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I was disconnected for a second there. Where did we land?
We ended that call and are just in a holding pattern to see if there are any more.
All right. Mayor, while we're waiting, would you like to go ahead and give your report?
Thank you, President. I do not have a report tonight. I guess my report is I'm trying to catch up. We are, I was rightly in the space of addressing concerns and meeting with a lot of people last week and taking a lot of phone calls and so on. And I will also say that I'm behind. So if you are a person who's called my office, I'm working through getting through calls and a couple hundred emails from last week, as well as trying to pick up some other work. So I do appreciate your forbearance with me and thank you.
All right, well, if anybody else calls, they're welcome to call. First of all, thank you, Mayor, for your report, such as it was, and for your leadership this week. I will take a moment. I know that I don't usually give a report here, but I feel obligated to do so after the past week in the city of Lancaster. You know, I'll say this, as a municipal official, having a main street shut down for several days is inconvenient, and it raises questions that we're not always immediately prepared to answer. But as a young person of color, and specifically a Black man, to see hundreds and thousands of people out on the street demanding both local and national change on issues that affect me personally, it's very rewarding, and I will be brief from here, but I do want to take a moment to specifically recognize the mayor, members of council, members of the city administration, and community members who have not just been engaged with these issues all week, but who I saw on multiple occasions put their bodies, their physical, actual bodies, between the community and violence, and between our officers and violence, and who stayed late into the night and came back the following day and came back despite threats and this and that and the other to de-escalate and negotiate and elevate the issues that are important here. We spend a lot of time, certainly whenever something happens that is of significance to the African American community, quoting Martin Luther King and leaders of the civil rights movement. but it's my opinion that their example was more important than their words. And to get change, they were willing to put their bodies in the gap. And so my specific gratitude and thanks go out to everyone who was willing to do that this weekend. We have a lot to review and a long road ahead of us to get at the kind of change that we want and the kind of change that you deserve. And there is such a thing as the fierce urgency of now, but I will also remind you, as I often have to remind myself, that the Montgomery bus boycott was 1955 and the Second Civil Rights Act was 1968. What we're talking about here is wholesale community and cultural change that will only happen if we're willing to stick with it, not for a week, not for a month, but for a significant part of our lives. And I think that we're committed to doing that, and I hope that you are too. Thank you. That moves us to the portion of the agenda reserved for council comments. Councilors.
Yes, Mr. President, I do have a question.
Councilor Diaz.
Along with the, I guess, ad hoc that is being spoken, I did not see that our human relation was included in that. And I'm questioning why we were not included, since I am on the board, on the Human Relations State Commission Board. So if someone could please answer that, because we do get the complaints.
That's true. Councilor Garcia Molina or Councilor Baykay, I think either of you two are best equipped to answer that question.
So one thing, I did reach out to the Human Relations Commission throughout this process, and I did not get a response.
Well, I'm responding.
I appreciate your response now, and you'll be brought in.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Great. I am still muted. Thank you, Councilor Diaz. Other council comments?
Mr. President, if I may.
Councilor Royal.
I just want to echo your comments earlier and thank the mayor, city council members for the past week. I know it's been extremely difficult for everyone, and also want to thank the citizens of Lancaster City that through a lot of the peaceful protests, there has been a lot of change that I think is going to come out of this. So I'm very excited to see how our city moves forward in the future. It wasn't without pain and frustration and quite frankly a lot of us being overwhelmed, but I think it's going to be worth it, and I'm excited to see what comes from this. So thank you all.
Similar to the mayor's response, I think I still myself, after 12 days of being there, sometimes from 11 to 2 in the morning, I'm still processing a lot of what's happened. I'm really excited and privileged to be a part of the formation of what is to come from this movement, but also to be able to live out the actions that we were speaking to throughout the protest. I did receive a lot of emails throughout this time. I am just getting to them. Today is my first day that I wasn't physically at the protest, so please be patient, and I promise that I will get to you as soon as I can.
You know what? Since it's my meeting, I'm going to go ahead and do a thing. I will also say, just to echo my comments last Friday, I need to find the right way to put this specifically. Policing, injustice related to policing, police misconduct, police accountability. These are significant issues that have affected my life personally and have affected many of the people here on this call. But I want to call attention to the idea specifically that Black Lives Matter, not just when it comes to policing. And I would encourage everybody, please have this same level of energy when it comes to housing injustice, when it comes to environmental injustice and budget disparities and tax policy because, you know what? It's still my meeting. There's a documentary that James Baldwin had a significant part in. It's called Take This Hammer. It references John Henry, and I mentioned it when I was inaugurated. And it was talking about this sort of, even in the 60s and 70s, San Francisco was imagined as this progressive liberal haven compared to the rest of the country. And a number of the people actually living in San Francisco, in Oakland, told the people working on this documentary that they actually preferred the way that they did it in Alabama because at least they did it to your face, specifically saying, the man might not be lynching you in San Francisco, but he's killing you with that paper and pen, brother. And so keeping in mind that the issues that come before policing, before crime, before any of these really tense and terse interactions are how people live. Do they have a safe place to live, a good roof over their head, a landlord that actually believes that their first duty is to provide a house for human beings? Do they have clean water and safe streets and a lead-free environment? And if we get all of those things done, a lot of the questions that we have about policing, frankly, are going to be obsolete because we're going to be living in a much more just society to begin with. And I'm done. I guess we've kind of beat the horse to death, so I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.